Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I can't see you, it's all in the dark. I think this is the new innovation, all the spotlight on us and we can't see the audience, but we know you're there. I think Arun, said a couple of critical things, right? I think innovation is key for growth and as well, maintaining, making sure that you stay alive. As we look at a lot of data globally, we see a lot of companies coming into existence, and over a period of 100 years, there are very few companies globally who actually survive more than 100 years. And the thing that distinguishes one from the other is the kind of innovation that they have been able to do, taking bold steps, steps that nobody else has taken, having the guts to do things differently. So it's my privilege. I think we have a very distinguished panel out here, all of them market leaders. These are, ladies and gentlemen, the innovators. They are the value creators of today's India. And they are the ones who make us different from what the other countries are doing and the powerful situation that India is in today in terms of growth. So let me start first with the lady beside me, Srividya. Srividya is from BPCL, and we've seen them doing a lot of things innovatively. And quite some time back, I think they implemented a strategy framework called Project Aspire, not only looking at what's happening now, but planning for the future. And I think it's a very dynamic scenario, right? We're talking about green fuels, but at other level, we have to also grow. So not focusing on R&D, but Srividya, as you look at innovation, right, and from your industry, from your company, what are you doing differently? What is the innovation that you're looking at?
Good evening, everybody. So as we were coming out of COVID, that was a period when all of us were looking at a very uncertain future. And the energy industry was no exception because there was a lot of uncertainty whether the traditional fuels will continue or we would be moving into the alternate fuels in terms of the cleaner fuels. And hence, there was a need for us to have a very clear strategy, and that's how we came out with a strategy document called the Project Aspire, wherein we had to keep our focus because as BPCL, we had to be in the forefront of the energy sector. And of course, ensuring that we are in a position to meet all our traditional fuels requirement, keeping in mind the investments that would be required to be made for make us future ready for the alternate fuels which would be there, and as well as the digital transformation which is required. So keeping this in focus, and that's how we came out with an Aspire document wherein we said that in the next 5 years, we would be making an investment of 1,70,000 crores, cutting across the traditional fuels as well as diversifying us into the petchem. And of course, transition fuel, as we are all aware, the transition fuel, we call the natural gas as a transition fuel, even though it's coming out of the fossil fuel, but the carbon emission of the natural gas is much lesser as compared to the fossil fuels. And that's how we came out with this document wherein we had laid out a clear path for us as to we will keep investing in the current, we'll look at the future as well, and the renewable fuels as well, and then so that we are relevant in the industry.
Thank you. I think you mentioned about a policy document. I think when you look at innovation, it's very critical. It's not only the senior management, but it percolates down. I think that's also helped the vision of where you want to be, right? I think.
Yeah, that was a large effort which was made that it's essential to keep the people on board, especially your employees. There has to be a very clarity as to what is that which we are doing and what these efforts are for. And that's how it was an All India program which was done, wherein the chairman, in fact, traveled across the country in order to keep in touch with the people, with the employees, with the dealer community, with the distributor community, because it's very essential because they are part of all our ecosystem. And so that's how the entire transmission of this overall strategy of BPCL was being done.
Thank you, Srividya. Now, moving on to Mr. Sandeep Batra. Pidilite has been, always an innovator the way we see from outside, and it's not only the effort that you put in the R&D, but whether it's about the product we were speaking, right, packaging across. So what does innovation mean for you? And what has the organization done? If you can share from your industry and the company it'll be used.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening to all the participants. I think if I were to maybe try and sum up what does Pidilite stand for, the way we look at ourselves internally. One, we are a pioneering company. Our motto is to continuously identify unserved and underserved markets and opportunities and serve them with brands. So that's the motto behind whatever we do in the organization. How do we do it? Obviously, you have to continuously scan the universe to look at where are these underserved, unserved markets. How do we do it? We put the best brains behind this. So we have internally a couple of the most senior-most folks who, having led businesses, now do nothing other than scan the world, scan India, what are the opportunities. We've also looked at India in its development mirrors many markets or countries, and we call them affinity markets. So as an example, maybe Thailand, Brazil, maybe in China. So whatever has happened in, let's say in China 10 years back, maybe it's the time to adopt that in India. So that is one way you get identification of opportunities. But our pioneering approach is not limited only to products. I mean, we are not here to identify new molecules or new elements. Our job is to look at, in the home improvement area, what are unserved or underserved markets and how you can best service it. So innovation did not only come out of an R&D lab. And I'll give you an example to bring it to life. We are all aware of Fevikwik, what kind of a product it is. But we know Fevikwik as a brand. It's a product that can join anything. We have sold it now for donkey's years at 5 rupees. So for now, maybe 20, 25 rupees, years it has been sold at the same price point. But how did Fevikwik come? I mean, the product, the adhesive inside, we did not invent it. It was there in the market. But it had a problem. That moment, whichever package you put that adhesive in, moment it would get exposed to atmosphere, it will harden. So if you give somebody a very large package, unless he uses all of it, for example, if somebody is kind of laying the floor here, he may have used Fevikwik in this. So for him, a big jar is okay. But for home consumption, you need only 3, 4, 10 drops. So how do you deliver those 10 drops to the consumer? So our team must have been doing a lot of research, and this did not happen in my watch. But what I know is that they looked at, I think it was in some exhibition in Germany, they looked at how eye drops are dispensed. And they say this is the way, if eye drops can be dispensed, 5, 6 drops, single use, more or less kind of throw it away. Why not apply that packaging and that technology to make Fevikwik kind of product, something that every homeowner can use. And today, Fevikwik, if any of us are adventurous and you go on a trek somewhere in Northeast, you will find Fevikwik in the remotest corner, because most people who go on the trek, their shoes kind of get unstuck. So that's one way of doing it. Obviously, we've taken innovation in all areas, including in communication. So when you advertise also, would you do it differently? And a lot of it stems from what we call internally paranoia. If you're not paranoid about competition or about losing your existence, you will never innovate. You will become complacent. So for us, competition is paranoia. Not that we are scared, but we would like to watch. And our motto is that in whatever you do, whether it is product, whether it is the way you interact with your stakeholders or your channel partners, can you delight them a little bit more than what your competition does? And that is where innovation comes to play.
Thank you, Mr. Batra. Very interesting. In fact, reminds me of the HUL shampoo 1 rupee sachet, right? About how we can learn from other industries and use it. And of course, you highlighted very correctly about talent. Even when we talk about AI, etc., I think good talent is core to everything that we do and opportunities from anywhere. So thank you, Mr. Batra. Now moving on to Gaurav. Gaurav, looking at Reliance Retail, we have seen the kind of growth Reliance Retail has done, and there are various things to be managed, inventory, etc. So there must have been a huge amount of digital innovation, IoT, technology that you would use. So your views on about, innovation and especially on the digital innovation that you've looked at.
Sure. I think, first of all, thanks for having me on the panel. And I think very interesting topic that we have at hand in terms of innovation and how it is contributing, or how we need to continuously keep innovating towards becoming more and more sustainable. So as an organization, first of all, Reliance has been one of the largest contributor to the India's growth and GDP, both by size, by revenue, by profitability. So there's a very strong sense of ownership. There's a very strong sense of need that we have to continuously keep improving, keep innovating. And as you rightly pointed, being one of the largest in terms of organized retail as well, we have this consciousness and this responsibility on us that how do we continuously keep moving forward. And for that, from an innovation standpoint, I think the three strong pillars, if I may say, one is how do you keep customer at the center of everything that you do and innovate or bring your solutions around it. And hence, there's a very strong need to kind of collaborate with your partners. We don't call them vendors, or we don't call them our suppliers. It's our partners with whom we collaborate very, very strongly to innovate in terms of what products that we bring through and what we offer to the market. Second, I think what we want to offer the customer is convenience. Customer today, if I talk about supply chain standpoint, today the customer expects convenience, it expects agility, it expects speed of delivery, and last but not the least, the visibility of the entire delivery or the entire value chain. And we all appreciate information, we all appreciate data points. So from that standpoint also, how can a customer order online through the app and get it home delivered, get it delivered at the nearest store, or pick at his convenient time from the store? So I think all those, again, become more and more customer friendly, and hence you lead towards more sustainability in terms of contribution towards being net carbon neutral by making your entire digitization and logistic collaborate and serving customer at the most convenient point and the shortest distant point available. And hence, from a retail standpoint, if I talk about, so we have those solutions where you need not only deliver from your warehouses or from your, we call them fulfillment center or distribution center, but we also deliver from our nearest stores, which we call hyper locals. So from that model, the nearest store that you have in your vicinity will deliver stuff that you have ordered basis the availability. Last but not the least, from an Indian paradigm standpoint, if I see sustainability, where I think there's a very strong goal that our leadership have put on. So under the leadership of respected Prime Minister Modi, they have taken this target of being or generating 50% of the power through the renewable sources, which is the non-fossil fuels. And the good part is that we are on track for that. In fact, what we promised on the COP21, if I remember, we are ahead of 40% of the targets are already achieved. So I think that's a very strong milestone. And we see again a lot of private-public partnership in terms of not just there are organization of like ours in terms of Reliance moving into green and solar energy. The biggest plant that we have in terms of solar at our Jamnagar location from a solar standpoint. But also I see a lot of public partnerships. Government, NTPC recently came up with their NTPC green IPO and they are into it. And a lot of new mission and vision that we see from the government side as well in terms of ease of policy and ease of business in terms of green energy, supported by the Startup India mission. I think that's a very strong way forward that I see, very critical and very timely that's happening across the globe. So I think those are few top of the mind factors that I see will move forward and definitely happy to deep dive further on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. We'll delve into the sustainability piece in the next question. You know, managing both growth and sustainability parallel is not an easy task, and so thank you for sharing your thoughts. Now, moving on to Mr. Nandakumar, Tata Chemicals has been, of course, a leader in many areas. New innovation, the kind of chemicals. You've got multiple awards and innovations. How do you look at innovation and what are you doing within Tata Chemicals in this area?
So Tata Chemicals is global. We have got companies in US, UK and Africa. And Tata Chemicals, all these companies are more than 100 years old, 1916, 1874. And they have stayed on for so many years because of innovating throughout their journey. At this point in time, we have a R&D or innovation lab, we call it in Pune, at the foothills of Mulshi. And we got 250 scientists, most of them PhD holders who are day in and day out innovating in that lab in Pune. We also have 2 more labs in Bangalore for the Rallis Agri-Sciences team. Now, but the bulk of the innovation is happening now more on the green chemistry part because of the fact that today I think chemicals as industry consumes or emits a lot of CO2 in terms of its chemical making. And therefore, the customers who are there are wanting to, and also correctly so, to more and more green products. So if you look at the way we're trying to do how we can minimize the impact of CO2, for example, I can give you, is that in UK, we have built a UK's largest carbon capture plant. And through a patented route now, we also use the same carbon which is captured to make, again, the whole bicarbonate. Bicarbonate, otherwise we have to buy CO2 in the market. And today we are using the CO2 which is, again, captured. So like that, we are innovating throughout. One more example is in case of the whole silica. We make silica for making tire. Tire companies buy silica from us. Silica, you can make it from soda ash, which emits CO2. We're trying to work on the paddy waste, the rice husk ash, which also has silica. So trying to see if we can use the waste from the agri to make silica to supply. So in a way, trying to innovate throughout the journey so that what we give our customers have lesser CO2 imprint in terms of the whole the world. So like that, I'm saying we also have teams working in UK, US, and in Africa to see how we can innovate more and more. An example, going back to my Titan where I used to work earlier of innovation, not R&D, example of a carat meter. If you see in India, Titan is in Tanishq, their jewelry. Till 20 years back, Tanishq was losing money. They're making losses every year. Innovation, like they've got a small carat meter, which is a machine in every store where one can go and check the quality of gold. And generally, there was a lot of adulteration happening in the gold. And when customers walked in with their family jewels, they found that the bulk of it was adulterated by having a mix of others. So with that, the customers' eyes got opened. And Tanishq, being the Tata Group, everything we sell is absolutely pure. And from then on, journey has gone. Today, the company is 3.5 lakh crore market cap company. So simple innovations can take the company from somewhere to somewhere. Like that, I'm saying innovation is in Tata's DNA. In Tata Chemicals, we are innovating throughout as we speak.
Thank you so much. I think creating the brand confidence, right, like what you mentioned in Tanishq, and it's really been great. I think everybody's also learned from that how transparency can also help in growing the business, right? Moving on to pure, looking at sustainability and growth, let me start with Gaurav out here. Gaurav, you covered a little bit about green energy, but how do you look at your role in supply chain, right, to make it more sustainable, especially in today's world where, we have seen a lot of supply chain disruptions globally, and we are now integrated with the global economy. So how do you see sustainability in supply chain for your organization?
Sure. So I think you rightly touched upon the point. There's a lot of disruption. We thought earlier that COVID is the biggest disruption that we would have ever seen. I think the Black Swan event, unprecedented by all means and scale that we were impacted. However, that's behind us. But supply chain is still getting disrupted due to, you talk about Israel war or the Russia-Ukraine war or the Baltimore bridge falling down. So a lot of these factors keep disrupting the supply chain and I think makes it more challenging and interesting. And hence, that's where I think the core fundamentals and principles of supply chain, be it any industry, it's not just for pharma or not just for chemicals or for Pidilite or BPCL or any other organization or any other industry, if I may say, the core principle lies the same, which is that you have to ensure that you have the right stock to norms. It's a very fundamental thing. So if you have that and if you maintain that accurately, I think you have a good safety stock norm, good buffers at your end. So any disruption that you cannot preempt the disruptions, but you can be prepared for those disruptions. And hence, one of my favorite topic is supply chain risk management, where you talk about or you classify the risk in terms of what can be prevented, what can be mitigated, what can be delegated, and what can be avoided. So I think these risks, if you understand and classify, for example, for pharma, the risk is that if you are dependent on one source, China for that matter, for APIs and excipients, we are a lot dependent. So then we understood, and I think COVID not just taught, but helped us catalyze that efforts in those directions. So all of us today in the pharma industry have China plus one source, or we have multiple sources, if I may say. So I think that's one very fundamental thing which every industry need to have. For your class A products, which contribute 75 to 80% of your revenue and profits, you cannot have one source, right? You need to have multiple sources. Same ways, stock norms, not just for your finished goods in the pipeline or in the market, but also for your raw materials. And in fact, we even saw certain disruptions especially in pharma. And in my previous organization at Cipla, we were pioneer in respiratory, in asthma and COPD. So a lot of parts as small as just an actuator which helps you pump and get the medicine out, which is the cheapest part in the entire value chain, but that has the highest lead time. So if that's not there, your entire chain gets disrupted. So how do you now, with the help of so much data that you are sitting with, how can data support and help? And I think previously also certain presentations were there, that data today is the oil, and that helps you bring out much more meaningful inferences. So rather than basis your gut feel, you have a very strong database decision making. So your supply chain, which is a lot more, we are all aware that we are in the VUCA world. Today something is disrupted, tomorrow something else could be disrupted. So how can you ensure database decision making? How can you ensure that you have identified and defined very scientific stock norms? How can you ensure that you have multiple sources? You have quality issues or your technical issues in pharma, they are a lot more common. So how can you ensure you have, again, using predictive analytics, there are a lot of predictive maintenance cycles. Rather than you maintaining only when you get disrupted, you do predictive maintenance at what periods you need to do, and how do you ensure, because India again is a market, or is not just one country, but a subcontinent which has 28 different markets in it. So everybody or every market behaves very, very differently. So how can you be strong on your demand analysis, keep sensing those signals from the market, be in touch on the ground, and ensure that your demand signals are kind of taken directly in terms of inputs that helps you kind of put the right product at the right time, at the right place. So if you ensure these very simple but very, I would say, strong fundamentals and principles intact, I think your supply chain is very secure. Your market share, your customers will not be dissatisfied. Yeah.
Thank you. I think you put it very well, looking at sustainability along with proper risk management, right, and data and analytics. And I come from a company which is pure into data and analytics, and we are exactly solving the problem that you mentioned. How do you make sense in this plethora of data, right? And there is disruptions happening across, and I think VUCA was a word that we used. We've been using it for many years now. I think it is a word, the world which is going to be changing forever, right? It's very dynamic. And we'll have to live with the dynamics and be able to predict with our sense and then, sort of plan. And data is the only way to go forward. So thank you for touching on that. Change is the only constant. These are all proverbs and phrases that we keep hearing and using. That's the reality. Yeah, so coming to Mr. Nandakumar. Mr. Nandakumar being the CFO, large company, new areas of growth and innovation, right? And sustainability. Sustainability sometimes also comes at a cost, right? Newer, greener, chemicals, etc. So how do you approach financing sustainable chemistry, and what has been your biggest challenges when you look at innovations as well as maintaining, the financial viability?
That's the biggest challenge in terms of, marrying your IRR with your, cost in terms of the sustainability. So it's always, so unless you factor in a certain carbon emission cost, it's difficult to make any sustainability capex make money. So generally, therefore, unless you factor in that if I don't do it, I'm going to have X dollar of cost, it's generally difficult to make money on, in our example, in terms of any capital cost for improving the sustainability part. At the same time, the same example of UK, where we have said that we had done a carbon capture plant at a particular cost, and there government gives grants. So where it's not viable, you obviously have to ask for money from the government. So I think most governments are again giving grants where required. Because without government support, sometimes it's not possible to really go that path. You also have a lot of banks who support by way of issue a green bond. It comes much cheaper than other bonds. So that way you're able to get financing a bit cheaper, 0.25% cheaper than otherwise through banks. So there are avenues available if you're unable to do by accessing the government grants or going to banks who can give at a cheaper price than otherwise available.
So you're very rightly touched upon, Mr. Nandakumar, that for organization, even as large as yours, to be sustainable, we need a full ecosystem, right, where you have the government, you have the financial institutions all supporting and believing in this cause and working with new innovative means to support it. So thank you so much for that. We talked about risk management now. Coming to Mr. Batra on that. So we've seen a lot of new age risks come in, right, because of the disruption that's been going on. How do you look at innovation and risk management together as you plan your growth forward?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very pertinent question. And for a company that is a pioneer, there would be many risks associated around innovation. And I'll maybe touch upon one or two of those risks. But basically, I think the approach that we take is that it's not possible for any company to track and manage 300 risks. So we have shortened them and said, what are your top 7, 10 risks? And innovation falls or is at the top of it. So what it means is that if you've called innovation as a top risk, then you resource it appropriately. So there is a risk of not being able to do innovation, which can be addressed through proper resourcing. I mentioned earlier that we have this paranoia, and we have one more paranoia we have is that we should not allow anybody or any company to out-technologize us. If there is any word like that, I don't think there is an English word which says anybody who can beat you in technology. So one of the way we address it is that while you may not have the technology within you, can you partner with somebody who has the best technology? It could be somebody outside India. So that's one approach that we take to this risk. One more approach that we take is that we are a very, very firm believer in doing proof of concept or doing pilots. So rather than staking everything, you have an idea, do a pilot, torture test it, but with proper hypothesis. Once the pilot is validated, then you decide to scale it up. Um, Associated with innovation, there is another risk that your intellectual property could get compromised, right? It's very common, either your brand can get infringed or your product formulae can get copied. So there again, we would use technology and whatever else is required. So our approach to risk is not just only about the product failing. That we can deal with. You know, a company of our size and legacy, we have many products that people would not have known about. Everybody knows about Fevicol and Feviquick and so on and so forth. But there will be many. So you do proof of concept, take bite-size risks, resource this area correctly, and as I said, have one mantra that nobody should be able to out-technologize you.
It's very interesting. I think, you very nicely put it that everybody talks about the successes. One doesn't measure the failures which have gone behind it. And even in the startup economy, we only talk about the successes, but the failures are very important, and the risk-taking ability and managing the proof of concept, I think, work very well in making sure the direction that we are going. Now, coming to Srividya. Srividya, being the head of Treasury, how do you assess and mitigate financial risks while ensuring sufficient liquidity for green investments and innovation?
Yeah, as Mr. Nandakumar hit the nail, yes, the IRR has always been a challenge in terms of when we evaluate any of the investments which we'll have to make in the alternate fuels. The other major challenge which we have in the alternate fuels is in the way the technology has been pretty disruptive. As we all know, the way the cost of the solar panels have just crashed over a period of 5 years. So investing upfront in any of these as well has been very difficult decision to make, and hence BPCL, if you look at it, our investments in any of these alternate fuels have been pretty measured manner that we have been doing it. It is being tried and tested in terms of smaller investments which are being made in terms of solar as well as wind energy, wherein, because we definitely have large quantum of captive requirement of the energy which is there at our refineries. And hence we are looking at investing in solar and wind at our refinery premises because we have large area which is available there. And these are smaller investments which are being made. And we are also trying to diversify our risk when it comes to this alternate fuel is by looking at joint venture partners who have the technological novice who is there, who have probably tried and tested, who are probably not within India, even outside India. So that's the other way we are trying to diversify ourselves in terms of having equity partners in terms of the joint ventures. Yes, as of now, most of the investments that we have been making is only out of our balance sheet, because our balance sheet is strong enough now that we are able to take these investments on our balance sheet. But going forward, we think that probably there will be many more instruments like the green bonds probably will become a little more matured in the market, be a little more competitive. That as the fund requirements keep increasing, then probably we look at those kinds of other instruments which are going to be required. Because once we'll have to meet the net zero initiative, which is there, which is going to be the very large, huge investments which will be required to meet the net zero initiative or the targets that we have taken. But I think that will happen over a period of time. And definitely, I think with the kind of liquidity which is available in the country, and with the economy growing, it's more and more funds which are supposed to come into India. And definitely, I think we should be able to meet the challenges as and when we face it.
So you're absolutely right. I think every company has taken a net zero target. India itself has a target of 2070. So taking small steps, seeing what works, sometimes it's wind, sometimes it's solar, there are expenses to it. It's not going to be an easy task in the next 20, 30 years to come in. I know we are a little running out of time. Do we have time to take a few questions?
My question is to Mr. Nandakumar. I'm Ramaswamy. I was whole-time director of Borosil Renewables earlier. Now I'm working with a company called Solar Cycle in USA. It is 85% of the recycling business is done by our company. Recently, we tied up with Genesis, a soda ash company in US, because their uh, energy consumption is 37% lower because they produce natural soda ash compared to synthetic soda ash, solvay process, or whatever other processes you are using. Now, what innovation we are doing to reduce this energy consumption, and why we are unnecessarily asking government to, as far as India is concerned, to put anti-dumping duty on soda ash coming from natural soda ash. See, natural soda ash is, we have to leave this country-wise separation. We have to see global emissions. So if you can make the same product with less emission, 37% less emission, and you are making with a much higher emission, then either you have soda ash manufacturing in US, and US has got a lot of deposits. You can take it from that and bring it to India. Or you can work on your process and reduce the emissions. So what Tata Chemicals is doing on that?
So Genesis Alkali is in US, so are we. So if you look at the way soda ash is made in US is natural, which means that the Wyoming state is blessed with a huge amount of soda ash in the soda ash from underground. Like Genesis, even Tata Chemicals USA emits very low CO2. It's not that they do more. Now we are working on further bringing it down in US by going nuclear. Today in US, it's a combination of gas and coal, because in soda ash or any chemical, more than half the cost is energy. And today we are using both coal and gas, and both are huge CO2 emitters in spite of the natural soda ash. So trying to work on a nuclear option where the Wyoming state is now getting into a small reactors, which is actually zero carbon emission. So in fact, that is going to be given to all the companies there, but we're the first ones to tie up with the government of Wyoming to start using nuclear maybe 10 years from now. So that way, I think Tata Chemicals is very well equipped to lower the overall CO2 base for soda ash.
Okay, can't make out. Okay, I think we'll move ahead and with the concluding question that I have to all the panelists. You mentioned, Mr. Badra, about collaboration and partnership, right? And let me start with you, a short one point. What kind of collaborations are you looking at? What kind of partnership are you looking at as, you grow Pidilite?
So I think in our case, we are absolutely agnostic to the way that you partner. So we are open, and we have done partnerships outside. I mean, both in India, outside India, academia-related partnerships, a partnership with maybe IIT or some other institute. A partnership could be also in the form of a technology license. Partnership could be in the form of a joint venture. So for us, all avenues are absolutely open, because we've realized that everything you don't need to do it yourself, and probably you can't do it. So there are many centers of excellence. Tap into whatever is most cost effective.
Thank you. Srividya?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my answer to the previous question, yes, in order to diversify our risk as well, we are definitely looking at partners. And partners become very essential, especially in the new areas wherein you don't have the technological expertise in that. And definitely there are partners who bring in the expertise. Even in the case of the CBG, which is the biogas front which is there, and the ethanol front, if you look at it, in both the areas we do have large number of partners with whom we collaborate in order to put up these CBG plants which are there. And definitely they play a very important role, especially when we go through this kind of a transition, wherein not everything is known to us, and definitely we are looking at partners who can probably supplement us or complement us with the gaps that we have in the various areas which we have identified.
Thank you. Gaurav?
So I think, as I already mentioned, I think there's a very strong collaboration that we do with our partners. And the most important thing is we see where they can complement us in terms of innovation, in terms of specific to this topic, in terms of sustainability. How can there be the triple bottom line be formed, which is more in terms of not just profitability, but also how do we impact people and customers and how do we impact the overall planet, right? So the 3 Ps, how do we impact with their skill sets and using them more from a 3 Rs perspective, which is how do you reduce, reuse, and recycle so that you become even more sustainable and more contributing more to the net carbon neutrality as a right partner from a global sustainability standards standpoint to kind of benchmark with the best in industry. So I think that's the endeavor and that's what we continuously kind of from our continuous improvement programs as well that we run through, that's the endeavor that we do with all our partners.
Thank you, Mr. Nandakumar.
So I think innovation or R&D is no longer a fancy word. Now it's a necessary spend. If you don't do that, the customers will walk away. The example which he gave of lower CO2, for example. You have to keep innovating. Otherwise, over a point, you lose customers. So innovation is now a part of the business game and not really a good to have or a fancy word to show off in the circle. So you need to innovate throughout. Otherwise, you will lose business.